Good day everyone, it is Caitlin and today we are making a yoked 1860s wool dress. Hello and welcome. So let's go ahead and get cutting. So this was supposed to be the wool version of my 1850s black silk dress that we already recreated on the channel. And then I opened up my pattern box and pulled out the wrong pattern by accident. I pulled out my yoked pattern and I sat there, I was like, oh, I love yoked bodices. Oh, I want to do a yoked bodice. Cute 3 hours of research. So we're now doing a yoked bodice. We are not copying the 1850s silk dress. And yeah, I have all the plans now. So what I have here as far as fabric goes is I do have some very ugly green wool fabric. Unfortunately, finding wool in pretty colors is so hard to do nowadays. And I have two lengths of this. And we're gonna basically make an 1860s dress today. So I ripped off the ends because this is a plain weave fabric and I can do that. And I'm going to cut 2.5 panels for my skirt. This is about 60-inch wide fabric, or it's actually 61. Okay, 61, so that's with seam allowances, be 120, 180 inches would be 3 panels, which is more than enough. Cutting one of those panels in half will give me a really good skirt measurement of 150 inches, which will perfectly fit over my 100-inch hoop with a couple petticoats on top. So I went ahead and did that one in half. So I have a 30-inch panel. I wonder if I can get the whole thing on this. I might be able to do it all on this, which would be really nice because then I would have 4.5 yards left. I don't think I'm going to quite get that, but that would be nice. And this is a pattern I drafted myself off my own measurements, so no, it's not a commercial pattern. If I picked a slightly smaller sleeve, like a coat sleeve, and then I really pieced and got some things together, I probably could have made this out of the 4.5 yards, but there's no need to because I have plenty of fabric apparently. Anyone who tells you that cutting piping is wasteful is not cutting piping the right way, and that is by using scraps. An inch of fabric is an inch of fabric, no matter where and how you cut it. But these tiny little pieces, you can get them from little tiny bits of fabric that are just left over that otherwise just end up in your scrap bin. So might as well go ahead and use them up now. You know, I already deal with the 1830s so much, but I decided maybe I want to go for a little bit more of a gigot style sleeve for this. They have them in the 1860s. And although I never thought I'd be here because I actually hate gigot sleeves, let's bring that sort of 1830s love into this 1860s project. This is some good piping. I might be able to cut the back bodice out of one of these. I'm just going to cut a bunch of them because I really don't know how much piping I want to do on this particular dress. Because the yoke bodices, I can put it, of course, on the arm side and on the waistline. The normal spots and the neckline. That would be the 3 normal spots that you would typically find piping. I can also, because it's going to have a waistband, pipe the top of the waistband. I could also not. I could pipe where the yoked bodice meets the gathered part. I could not. I'm also going to cut some cuffs and I could pipe the edge of that. There's so many options. Alright, so my audio went out. Apparently my mic was not plugged all the way in, so you're going to get voiceover Caitlin for a little bit here. This is us beginning the skirt, so I have the pocket in right there. It's just a normal pocket that I made off of an original of mine. I got several pocket patterns, and I even did a how to put a pocket video, and that will be linked above and below in the description if you're interested in free mid-19th century pocket patterns and recreating them. The skirt is a simple running stitch just all the way down. It makes it super simple to do by machine. And we just got to do all 2.5 panels all the way down. And then at that point, the skirt is done enough to where we can hem it. Of course, we're going to use a facing and not an actual hem, as was typical in the 19th century. And I also do have a how to put a facing in video. Since the skirt is mostly prepped, I'm going to wait on all the handwork that has to do with the skirt. We're going to work on sleeves. So I have them pinned here. I left a little bit of gap at the bottom wrist, so to be able to get the hand in and out. I also did cut some cuffs. These are very, very similar to the original black silk dress that I own. And this is what the cuff is going to look like on. And so all we have to do really is sew the cuff together, turn it inside out, and attach it to the sleeve itself. And then hand work it up and across so it looks like a cuff. Now the cuffs are in, we are going to go ahead and do the hooks and eyes that are going to close them. The original 1850s dress does have hooks and eyes closures on the cuffs. I generally prefer button and buttonhole closures. I just hate doing buttonholes, so I tend to do hooks and eyes a little bit more often, even though they're not my preferred closure. They're my preferred sewing method. And then let's talk trimming. So I have here some silk ribbon. This is about an inch wide, a little over an inch. I think it's like 1.25 inches or so, which is very simple. So I just ran 2 gathering threads, about 1/4 or 1/8 of an inch from each end. And we're going to just attach it to the sleeve. So I'm marking the center of the cuff and the center of my trimming, so I know exactly where it's going to lay. The trimming itself is about 1.5 times the width of the cuff. And I can even out those gathers and sew it on. Sewing is pretty simple. It's just a very simple loose running stitch. It doesn't actually have to be very tightly on, because trims are usually the first thing to get replaced when you're updating a dress. Alright, now that I have the sleeves done, we can work on the bodice. So what I'm starting to do is get the bodice pieces attached to the lining, because the lining I cut exactly to size, so that I will need to dart the lining of the front bib. This is the back. And so it takes a little bit more work than a typical regular bodice. So I did have to sew across, which we'll do with the front in just a second. And after I pleated it, then pleat the bottom, and I get to pull them apart and iron them very flat so that those actually stay. Make sure everything's nicely laid out. Now that needs a very good pressing before I start pleating the bottom of it. So I did decide to pleat this yoke. I went back and forth because I really don't like the look of pleated yokes. I love yoke bodices. Not a fan of the pleated yokes, I prefer the gathered ones. But given that this is 1860s and this is wool, it'd be far more common to pleat the skirt than to pleat the, than to gauge or gather the skirt. And also, the sleeves I think would look better pleated, and I thought it would just look very strange to have a gathered yoke but pleated skirt and pleated sleeves. And I think found one photograph of that, but I found several of the pleated yoke, pleated sleeve, and pleated skirt kind of all matching, and so I decided to go with that just for clarity's sake. So I'm going to need to dart the lining before I mess with this, but then this is all going to get pleated up and we can actually start the bodice, because this is all prep work that if we had just sewn a plain bodice, we went to do any of this, we would just sew the bits together, or all the pieces, and that would have been super fast and easy, but we're having to do all this prep work because of the type of bodice that this is. Alright, we are now going to talk about the fact that it took me all day yesterday to get these dang pleats on the front fixed, because this fun little area where the breasts go is still not perfect. So I'm hoping that when I put this on, it doesn't take out all my darts or all my pleats. It really did take me all day yesterday to do that. To the point where if this doesn't work, I'm taking the whole thing apart and we're just going to do it gathered, because I don't feel like I want to deal with this anymore. So I'm going to sew the bodice together at the side seams and the shoulder seams, front and back. And I guess go ahead and put on the waistband, which I have cut somewhere. And I think of the waistband is I'm going to put piping there. When I get that done, I think I'm going to go ahead and try this whole thing on, just to see where I'm at and see whether I'm going to need to take the whole thing apart or not. It fit, I just didn't like the way the pleats looked. I think they would look really good on a person who didn't have such a high bust to waist ratio measurement as I do, because the 15 inches from my bust to my corseted waist is it didn't look good with the pleats. I think it would look good on someone who's slight of chest or a child or, you know, that sort of thing. It did not look good on me, so I took it apart. Luckily it only took me like an hour to do that, and I'm back putting this all together. So I just ran a gathering thread on the top and the bottom of all the pieces, and I can just put them together. I did mark the center. This is the top front, one of the fronts. So this is basically going to be like the gathered yoke cotton dress that we did, I don't know, a couple years ago. But gather it to fit the yoke, and then distribute the gathers, pin them together, and we'll sew it on machine. I'll need to put the piping and the waistband back on, but then we'll be back where we were, so it's not that big of a deal. I was able to leave the bodice sewn together. Like I didn't take out the side or the shoulder seams. I didn't have to take out the neckline piping. It worked out pretty well to where it wasn't, I didn't have to take the whole thing apart, which is helpful. And looking back at the CTVs that I was using for inspiration, it did seem like a lot of the women were either young and or slight of chest. So I'm wondering, it's just not my style. Alright, we are putting the bodice back together at the final step of putting the piping on the very bottom waistband. So I have the waistband with that piping, but I have a coarse piping at the bottom. Nicely gathered bodice that we talked about we were doing. I also went ahead and put in the sleeves with the pleats. I was going to film that, and then I started doing it and it was miserable. So I didn't feel like filming that, and it was late at night anyway, so lighting was not going to be good. But that's basically all I did last night. Putting on piping, that way we can turn it under and stitch it down. Put in closures, trimming. I have to finish facing the skirt because I only got that partially done yesterday. And then we can attach the whole thing. Alright, so here is the edge of the bodice that we were just tacking down this piping. It's the exact same thing I did with the neckline piping. If you want more detail on how I put on piping, I do have a how-to video for that, and I will link that above and put it in the description below. So if you're interested in seeing exactly how we do piping in the mid-19th century, I'll put it in the description below, and also have it linked so you can look at that at your convenience if that interests you. Okay, so bodice just needs closures. We're going to do that in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and finish the facing of the skirt first. I also have a how-to video for putting in facings that I will link for y'all just in case this is new and you'd like to know how to do this and the types of finishing options. I might have left this one raw because it's wool and I'm likely not going to have to wash this, so raw is fine. Turned over at the top, pleated. I will get that done, but we're going to work on closures for the bodice next. So I also have a hook and eye sewing on video, because there's several ways that I found in extant garments that they would sew hooks and eyes on. So I do have a video for that. I'm not sure I'll be able to link it above because YouTube only lets me do 5 of those. But if it's not up there, it'll be down in the description below. And I think I'm going to go ahead and attach the skirt before I do the trimming, just so I can say the dress is actually technically done. Alright, I am sewing the bodice, sewing the skirt to the bodice. That's what we're doing. So I have the double box pleats for the skirt, and we are doing a partially gauged skirt because this is my favorite skirt treatment for the mid-19th century, because it doesn't matter if I messed up with my pleats, my pleating math. And so basically it's do the math. If it doesn't work out perfectly, we're just going to gauge the very center here anyway. So you can see I have this section that's not pleated. That's what's going to get gauged. Now again, I am going to gauge the center back here, just so I don't have to worry about my pleat math not being perfect. Alright, so I am putting on trims for our very last step. So I just have the same shirring that we did before, and just kind of barely tacking it on, again, just like we did with the sleeves. And then we get to try this whole thing on. and see how it looks. I love it when I like get the exact amount of thread that I need. It's perfect. All right, here's the dress. So ignore the 1850s floofy petticoat. It's the only one I could find that goes over a hoop, or that would fit over a hoop. It doesn't actually belong over a hoop, as evidenced by this giant excess amount of fabric, because it's supposed to fit over 4 other petticoats in their waistbands. Anyway, got the dress. I got a collar and cuffs put in. That video will be coming out in a few weeks. So you get a little bit of a sneak peek into some of the accessories. I was just thinking as I put on this hoop, it's been a very long time since I've worn a hoop. Like, years, it feels like. Yes. Alright. So there we are. I love the sleeves. You know, I know I'm not a huge fan of the giant poopy 1830s sleeves, but I like them when there's no sleeve puffs in them, as long as there's no supports in them, and they're kind of just excess fabric that kind of just folds over. I love them. It's so strange. It's been a very long time since we made an 1860s dress. This is... Color isn't exactly what I would have chosen if I had a lot of choices, but it was the best out of the options I had. And quite frankly, it's not so bad. Got a nice big pocket here. It's in the right spot. Maybe a little lower than it needed to be, but it's fine. Length is good. I know y'all can't see, but it fits exactly just around, just a hair above the floor. And of course it's so far out because of the hoop that I can walk just fine in it. There's the back. Hopefully I'm not all caught up back there because I can't see back there. But yes, I mean, so I could have done knife pleats instead of the box pleats, but I was doing double box pleats here and I had box pleats here, and I thought it would just look weird to have knife pleats here. So it was kind of a shame because the back looked really good with the box pleats. It looked so good. It just was not going to fit from here down to here, because there's a good 15-inch difference between this measurement and this measurement. And doing box pleats wasn't going to work out. So knife pleats would have worked better for me. Unfortunately, I'd already really had my heart set on the double box pleats here and box pleats here, so it wouldn't have looked terrible, I don't think, but I did find a couple photographs that showed gathering up here, pleats here, so it worked out. It is nothing like I had planned it to be from the beginning. It still turned out really cute. I'm very happy with it. And although it's not a very pretty color, I think the pink is just enough to where it looks nice and presentable. So I do actually have a necktie too that's out of the same pink silk bag. I could, pin up here, give it a little bit of extra splash of color. A nice belt would work. I need to find my belts somewhere. They're somewhere. But yeah, that's essentially a nice 1860s dress. And we used to make them all the time, but we have not made them in a very long time. With all that being said, that is our 1860s dress. Thank you so much for joining me today as we made our 1860s wool yoked dress. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. Click that little bell notification so you're notified anytime I upload a new video. And as always, have a fantastic week, and I'll see you back here in the next video.